Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe if you love gripping sci-fi tales where humanity refuses to be underestimated. It helps more people find these stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss how this one ends. The Galactic Council Hall hung in orbit around a dying red star, a cathedral of steel and light that spanned half a kilometer in every direction. Entire civilizations sent their voices to this chamber, a place where treaties were carved into the bones of history and where, today, the youngest member of the council would be publicly laughed at. Commander Elias Vance stood on the polished black platform at the center of the circular chamber, hands clasped behind his back, the Earth flag resting on the breast of his Navy uniform. He'd been warned that the council could be cruel. He hadn't expected them to find humanity so amusing. Hundreds of alien delegates floated, walked, slithered, or hovered in their respective observation tiers, each species represented by centuries of military or economic dominance. Above them, banners shimmered with holographic sigils. When Elias's turn came to speak, the laughter began even before he could finish his first sentence. "So, you keep these lesser creatures in your homes?" a scaled ambassador rasped, its four-fingered hand tapping on the railing of its tier. "Dogs, wolves, cats, falcons. You share your nests with predators." Elias didn't flinch. The Vorkon ambassador was taller than him by at least 2 feet, her crest of bone spikes reflecting the star's light like polished obsidian. A species of apex hunters who'd conquered 2 neighboring systems in a single generation. And yet, it was the idea of a Labrador that made her laugh. He glanced at the hollow display beside him. Images of animals, furred, feathered, sometimes toothy, rotated gently in the air. A golden retriever wagging its tail beside a toddler. A peregrine falcon perched on a handler's gloved arm. A wolf pack walking in formation behind a ranger. Primitive attachments, someone hissed in a language the translator rendered smoothly. Domestication, another scoffed, dripping disdain. One voice cut through the room like a blade. "You invite lesser predators into your dens. In the Vorkon creed, such beasts are trophies, not companions. We do not trust animals with claws." Elias inhaled slowly, resisting the urge to grin. He'd seen this exact scene in the briefing simulations. Underestimation was practically a galactic pastime when it came to humans. Still, there was something satisfying about letting them talk. "Ambassador Ssavor," he replied, voice steady, "where we come from, predators aren't just something we fear. They're something we understand." Laughter rolled across the tiers like distant thunder. Delegates who'd presided over the burning of worlds found humor in his words. One diplomat, a jelly-like being from Trial, shook its gelatinous body in amusement. A Zeranian scribe muttered something about soft species. A Velinari merchant smirked, his mouth full of needle teeth. But Elias saw what they didn't. Their contempt was a shield, a comfort against what they couldn't comprehend. To them, control meant dominance. To humans, it meant trust. He tapped the panel again and the hollow shifted. The next image was less cute. A wolf standing shoulder to shoulder with a man in combat armor on a snowy ridge. A falcon diving in coordinated strike patterns over a battlefield. Soldiers and service dogs moving in tandem, every step practiced. There was silence now, not because they were impressed but because they weren't sure whether to be. "Our animals don't obey because we cage them," Elias said evenly. "They obey because they choose to. That's the difference." A ripple of disdain followed, but it was quieter this time. Vorkon's crest flared briefly. "Such sentiment will get your kind killed. When the swarm comes, your pets will be the first to flee." "Maybe," Elias said. His eyes met hers. "But some predators don't run. Some stand their ground." He didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten. He didn't need to. Behind his calm, the memory of a very different kind of creature stirred. One with talons like razors and a stare like a storm. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the council chair, a translucent, many-eyed being from the Thaler Collective, signaled the end of Earth's presentation. "Humanity's cultural demonstration is noted," it intoned. "We thank our youngest members for this glimpse into their peculiar customs." The laughter returned, but it was thinner now, a little more forced. Elias stepped off the platform, ignoring the looks that trailed him. Some were mocking, some curious, a few calculating. Humanity was new to this galaxy, and new species were rarely taken seriously until they bled for the stars. A uniformed officer from the Earth delegation intercepted him in the corridor, saluting sharply. "Commander Vance, Priority 1 transmission from Helios Orbital," she said, handing him a secure wrist link. Her expression was tense. Elias raised a brow. "Helios?" "Yes, sir. They've Found something. He accepted the transmission. The moment the holographic seal opened, the noise of the council faded from his mind. A grainy image appeared, containment walls reinforced with blue energy fields, soldiers standing behind them with weapons drawn. And behind the field, a shadow moved. Massive. Silent. A shape that made armed men step back. Identification? He asked. The officer swallowed. Sir, it's Rex. Elias's jaw tightened, not from fear but something older, heavier. Rex wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Helios. Maintain containment, he said softly, already moving down the corridor. The transmission ended, and the echo of laughter from the council chamber still rang in his ears. They thought they understood predators. They thought humanity was naive for walking beside them. They were about to learn the difference between a pet and a partner. And somewhere beyond the stars, the creature they all feared most was waiting for its human. The transport shuttle cut through the pale atmosphere of the Helios orbital perimeter with the smooth precision of military engineering. Commander Elias Vance sat in silence, strapped into his seat near the forward viewport, watching the containment spires of the station come into view. Helios was never meant to be beautiful. It was built like a fortress, layered shielding, multiple docking rings, and enough firepower to fend off a small fleet. That was why they'd chosen it. If something could unsettle Helios, it wasn't just dangerous. It was unprecedented. The pilot's voice crackled over the comm. Commander, docking in 2 minutes. Station security has gone to yellow alert. Containment field integrity is fluctuating. Elias didn't respond immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the structure at the station's heart. Containment Ring C, a dark circle where a single reinforced observation window caught the sunlight. The knowledge of what waited inside it pressed against his chest like an invisible weight. When the shuttle locked onto the docking clamps, the airlock cycled with a hiss. Elias stepped into the corridor, boots echoing against polished alloy floors. Officers were already waiting. 2 security captains in dark armor and a tall figure with ink-black feathers folded behind its back. The latter tilted its head sharply in greeting. Commander Vance, the avian officer said, its translated voice smooth and crisp. Welcome back to Helios. I am Captain Eris Vel. Containment of the entity has been challenging. Elias walked with them, each step taking him deeper into the secured levels. Challenging how? The fields are holding, but the power draw is near maximum. It hasn't attacked. It just watches, Eris said. I've been in military service 20 years. I've seen things that make your blood turn cold. But this creature? It looks at you and your instincts understand what your mind refuses to. They passed through a triple security gate. Pulse scanners, retinal checks, DNA confirmation. The air grew colder, sharper, humming faintly with energy from the containment field generators. Behind thick walls, something moved. A final door slid open and there it was. The chamber was vast, designed to hold starship engines, not living beings. But the creature inside made the space feel small. Rex stood in the center of the containment cell, a living contradiction of muscle and precision, a predator shaped by nature for absolute dominance. His 4 golden eyes gleamed faintly beneath ridged bone plates, pupils narrowing to slits as they met Elias's. 2 heavy forelimbs ended in talons that could shear through armored plating, yet he was unervingly still. His chest rose and fell in quiet rhythm, a steady, deliberate patience that unsettled everyone who watched him. Around the perimeter, soldiers kept their weapons trained, though they all understood how little that would matter if Rex chose to move. Elias approached the reinforced observation barrier. The hum of the containment field vibrated faintly against his fingertips. Rex tilted his head, a subtle movement that once meant danger, but to Elias, it meant recognition. One of the soldiers shifted nervously. Sir, it hasn't made a sound since we brought it in. Not a growl. Not a hiss. Just staring. It's thinking, Elias murmured. Eris shot him a sharp look. Thinking? He's not some mindless beast. Elias's voice was quiet, but it carried the kind of certainty that only comes from surviving beside something lethal. He's deciding. A murmur passed among the guards. None of them liked the implication. Rex lowered himself slightly, shoulders sinking in a fluid, controlled movement. He didn't bare his teeth or roar. He simply inclined his massive head, almost imperceptibly. Submission wasn't the right word. Recognition was. Elias remembered the moment he first saw him, blood, smoke, a shattered colony outpost. A juvenile creature barely clinging to life. Everyone else saw a weapon. He saw a decision, an apex predator choosing not to kill a wounded man. That decision had rewritten everything Elias understood about fear. Eris stepped forward, feathers ruffling. Commander, with respect, this thing has a Zeroth class threat rating. Even the Vorkon won't handle these alive. They hunt in packs, they calculate. It could break free at any moment. He won't, Elias said simply. The captain stared at him. You sound very sure. I am. A soft alarm chimed in the background, an approaching vessel. Elias didn't have to ask who it was. The Vorkon delegation had moved fast. Of course they had. They'd been the loudest in mocking humanity's connection to its predators, and now they were about to see the one that terrified their own soldiers. The observation deck doors slid open to reveal Ambassador SSA Vor and her guards. She walked like a blade drawn from a sheath, smooth, predatory, certain of her own superiority. Her crest flared when she saw Rex. For the first time since Elias had met her, her lipless mouth didn't sneer. "This is what your kind keeps as a companion?" she asked. Her voice had lost none of its edge, but something in it wavered. Rex didn't growl. He didn't need to. The room felt smaller, air thinning under a pressure that wasn't physical but primal. Every instinct in every living creature screamed the same message: predator. "Ambassador," Elias said, stepping between her and the barrier, "meet Rex." She tilted her head, studying the creature like a tactician studying an enemy fleet. "Zeroth class Apex. I've seen their kind slaughter my warriors. Why is it not restrained?" "It doesn't need to be," Elias replied. "Because it chooses not to leave." The ambassador barked a short, sharp laugh, but it sounded brittle. "You claim it as loyal?" "I don't need to claim," Elias said. "Watch." He stepped closer to the barrier. Rex shifted, lowering his massive frame until his muzzle hovered inches from the energy field. The soldiers tensed. Eris's feathers bristled. But Elias raised a hand, not to touch the field but to match the creature's gaze. 4 golden eyes softened. A single rumbling exhale filled the chamber, deep and controlled. Rex bowed his head. The ambassador didn't speak for a long time. Her nostrils flared, her crest tightened. "Your species is either extraordinarily foolish, or far more dangerous than you pretend to be." Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. A piercing siren tore through the chamber, flooding the hallways in red light. The intercom crackled to life with a voice strained by urgency. "All stations, this is Control. Unidentified fleet dropping out of FTL at the perimeter. Pattern matches. Krell swarm signatures." Every guard snapped to attention. Eris barked orders into his comm. The ambassador turned sharply toward the exits. Elias didn't move. He looked at Rex. The creature's pupils dilated, nostrils flaring as if it could already sense the chaos approaching. "Commander," Eris called, urgency sharpening his voice, "we're going to battle stations." Elias's voice was quiet, steady, anchored in a truth the council still didn't understand. "Then it begins." Rex lifted his head, eyes burning like molten gold. The laughter of the council felt a lifetime away. This was the moment everything shifted. The first wave struck before the alarm had fully faded. The Krell swarm moved like liquid shadow across the void, hundreds of needle-like ships slipping past the outer sensor nets. Their arrival tore through the stillness of space, filling the viewports with flickers of cold blue light. Inside Helios Orbital, the lights shifted to crimson. Sirens howled through the station's spine, a sound that carried no ambiguity. War had arrived. Elias Vance was already on the command deck, the hum of the station's power systems vibrating beneath his boots. Officers shouted coordinates, shields rippled under impact, and the image of the Krell fleet expanded across the tactical table like a growing wound. They didn't probe or posture. The Krell never did. They consumed. "They've bypassed the outer perimeter," Captain Eris Vel reported, feathers bristling sharply. "Multiple hull impacts on the lower ring. Boarding pods incoming. Estimated swarm size, 2,000. Evacuation." Elias asked. "Not possible. Too fast. They'll cut off the escape bays before anyone can launch." Elias's jaw tightened. The council's ambassadors were still aboard the station, tucked inside the diplomatic wing, and the thought of their panic wasn't comforting. The Krell didn't negotiate, didn't ransom. They harvested. Eris glanced at him, lowering his voice. "We can't hold against that many. Not for long." Elias knew. Every soldier on Helios knew. The Krell swarm was an old terror, a species that turned military stations into nests of bone and steel. But they hadn't calculated for everything. He glanced at the containment wing feed on the display. Rex paced now, no longer still. The creature's breath fogged against the barrier, eyes narrowing as if it could feel the swarm's presence like heat through glass. Bring the council into the secured wing, Elias ordered. Lock down civilian corridors. Redirect squads to choke points. And keep the containment wing powered. Eris hesitated. Sir. I know what you're thinking, Elias cut in. Don't say it yet. The station shuddered violently as the first Krell boarding pod struck. Metal groaned under the pressure, and distant explosions rippled through the lower decks. Over the comm, fragmented reports crackled in, breach points forming, soldiers overwhelmed, screaming cut short by static. Elias strode out of the command deck, Eris falling into step beside him. The elevator to the containment wing was longer than it should have been, every second accompanied by the dull, rhythmic thuds of approaching death. When the doors slid open, the air inside was electric. Armed squads lined the corridor, staring at the reinforced chamber that held the apex predator. Rex no longer stood motionless. His tail lashed once, twice, muscles coiled like steel cables under obsidian hide. The soldiers kept their distance, but their fear wasn't the frantic kind. It was quiet, respectful, instinctive. Ambassador Savor was already there, her guards clustered around her like nervous hatchlings. Her crest rose as Elias approached. The Krell are on the station, she said flatly. You can't hold them. You'll all be eaten. Not all of us, Elias replied. Her gaze snapped to the containment cell. You're going to unleash it. He met her eyes without blinking. Yes. She bared her fangs in something between disbelief and reluctant admiration. You're insane. Probably. The next impact rattled the corridor, sending dust from the ceiling panels. A voice shouted over the comm, Sector 4 breached. Krell in the corridor. We're falling back. Eris's hand hovered over the release panel. If you do this, there's no going back, he warned. There never was, Elias said quietly. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the containment field's steady hum. Then Elias stepped forward, pressed his hand to the biometric reader, and entered the override code. The barrier dropped with a hiss. Rex moved. Not like an animal lunging, but like a storm shifting its center. He stepped forward on all fours, shoulders rolling with silent power. The soldiers didn't raise their rifles. They didn't need to be told. They'd seen enough to know what he was. Elias didn't flinch as Rex's muzzle lowered until hot breath swept across his chest. For an instant, it was just man and monster, bound not by chains but by something deeper. Let's hunt, Elias whispered. Rex's roar split the corridor like a thunderclap. It wasn't a bestial scream. It was calculated terror. The Krell burst through the far end of the hallway seconds later, their chitinous bodies scraping against the metal, mandibles clicking in hunger. They surged forward in a wall of dark limbs and razor edges, until they saw him. The apex predator met their advance with a single low growl that reverberated in every bone. The front line of Krell faltered. For the first time in recorded memory, the swarm hesitated. Then Rex charged. He hit them like a blade cutting through silk, movements impossibly fluid for something his size. Talons ripped through armored carapaces. Jaws crushed skulls with surgical precision. The Krell shrieked, but the sound was swallowed by the predator's momentum. He didn't waste a motion. Every strike was deliberate, every kill final. Elias moved with him, not behind but beside, rifle raised to cover the gaps Rex left intentionally. A fluid rhythm they'd built years ago unfolded in the chaos. A hunter and a soldier moving like a single organism. Behind them, the soldiers and even the Vorkon guards stared, their disbelief cracked open by awe. This is no pet, Savor breathed. Another wave of Krell tried to push through the corridor, but the predator's roar turned it into a killing ground. Elias's orders snapped through the comm like clean cuts. Push with us. Secure this wing. We make our stand here. Eris and the squads fell in, their hesitation burned away by the simple, undeniable fact that they were following something far deadlier than the enemy they feared. The hallway filled with smoke and fire, the Krell piling high, but Rex didn't slow. Every creature that fell beneath his claws became proof of what humanity had always known. Power wasn't just about dominance. It was about the choice to wield it. The last of the wave broke under the assault, bodies scattered across the floor. The silence afterward was thick, the kind that came not from peace but from stunned realization. Rex stood at the front of the corridor, blood streaking the black plates of his hide, golden eyes gleaming beneath the emergency lights. He turned his head, scanning the soldiers behind him as if ensuring they were still standing. Ambassador Savor stepped forward, her voice low. I've fought your kind on 3 fronts, she said to Elias, but I've never seen anything like this. Elias met her gaze. You mocked us for walking beside predators. Now you understand why we can. A distant explosion echoed through the station. This was just the first wave. The swarm wasn't finished. Rex lifted his head toward the sound, nostrils flaring. Elias raised his rifle and turned to the soldiers. Form up. We're not done yet. And as the station trembled again, every alien in that hallway realized something they'd never admitted before. Humanity didn't keep predators because it was weak. Humanity walked with them because no one else dared to. The smoke curled low in the corridors like a living thing, clinging to the floor and swallowing the red emergency lights in a dull haze. Alarms still screamed, but beneath the chaos, another rhythm had begun to take shape. Orders barked. Boots struck the deck in unison. The station was no longer panicking. It was bracing for war. Elias Vance strode through the corridor with his rifle slung tight, Rex prowling silently beside him like a shadow stitched to the floor. The apex predator's massive frame moved with the precision of a blade, not stomping, not growling, just waiting for the next thing to break. Soldiers fell in behind them almost without realizing it, their steps unconsciously matching his. Leadership wasn't asked for. It was earned. Eris Vel met them at the intersection of the command access way, feathers singed from the last breach. Multiple entry points breached, he reported. The Krell are splitting into hunting packs. They're not trying to destroy the station, they're trying to take it. They won't, Elias said. His voice carried the weight of certainty, though his heartbeat thudded like a war drum beneath his calm. What's their strongest push? Deck 32. That's where the council delegates are held. If they get through. They won't, Elias cut in. He turned to Rex. The creature tilted his head, listening, nostrils flaring as if he could taste the air. A faint, guttural sound rumbled deep in his chest. Not a roar, not a threat, but the quiet sound of something narrowing its focus. The council chamber was half a kilometer away, deep in the heart of Helios. Between them and that chamber lay choke points swarming with the Krell. Every second mattered. Elias signaled the units forward. The first wave came at the outer bulkhead. The Krell swarmed like a living tide, claws screeching across metal, mandibles snapping with hunger. Their shrieks echoed through the corridor, a sound designed to make prey run. Rex charged. There was nothing beautiful about it, only terrifying efficiency. He struck the first pack like a storm, claws and teeth cutting through carapace with a precision that turned the Krell's numbers into a liability. Their speed meant nothing when they were forced into a corridor where he ruled. Soldiers fell in behind, blasters lighting the smoke in short bursts. Every shot was deliberate, synchronized with Rex's movements. Elias moved with him, a commander not barking orders but fighting shoulder to shoulder. Each time Rex shifted left, Elias covered the right. Each time Rex lunged, Elias advanced. Years of unspoken coordination sharpened into something frighteningly fluid. Ambassador SSA Vor arrived from the flank with a Vorkon strike team, her crest flaring with aggression. For a heartbeat, she stared at the predator that had slaughtered the first swarm, and then she fell in beside him, not questioning, only fighting. Her people matched the humans' rhythm, finding their place in the storm. This is madness, she muttered between bursts of plasma fire. This is survival, Elias replied. The Krell pushed again, this time heavier. A massive breacher drone forced its way through the corridor, its armored frame scattering debris. The creature behind it towered over the swarm, its spines bristling with bioluminescent pulses. Rex met the charge head-on. He didn't hesitate, didn't wait for an order. His roar shook the deck. He leapt, not like a beast but like a soldier taking his ground. The impact was bone-shaking. Talons tore into chitin. Teeth ripped into its throat. The breacher fell, thrashing, its own weight crushing the swarm behind it. Cheers erupted from soldiers who hadn't believed anything could kill something that size. But Rex wasn't done. He swung around, standing over the breacher's carcass, eyes locked on the next cluster. Every living thing on that deck understood that they weren't just following a creature. They were following the apex. Eris relayed updates through the comm, voice steady now. Upper decks holding. Section B clear. Council chamber next corridor. Elias's squad pushed through smoke and debris, advancing faster than any unit should have been able to. They reached the final bulkhead just as the Krell Queen's advance guard slammed into it. The Queen wasn't here yet, but her presence radiated through the swarm, a pulsing, coordinated malice. The bulkhead groaned. It wouldn't hold long. Elias checked his rifle, then glanced at Rex. We end it here. SSA Vor stepped forward, fangs bared in something between defiance and adrenaline. For once human, I don't disagree. The Krell breached. They poured through in a wall of claws and screeches, a tide of alien rage meant to overwhelm by sheer volume. But what met them wasn't fear. It was a united line, humans, Vorkon, station soldiers, and at the center, Rex. The battle became a blur of movement. Plasma fire tore through the swarm. Vorkon blades flashed in the smoke. Elias's rifle barked in sharp, controlled bursts. But it was Rex who broke them. Every roar scattered their formations. Every kill shattered their rhythm. He moved through the fight like a force of nature, not an animal unleashed but a weapon guided. And then the blast came. A Krell flanker slipped through a ventilation shaft, lunging toward Elias with a shriek. He spun too late. Claws raked across his armor, slamming him against the bulkhead. Pain flared hot and sharp down his side. The Krell lunged again. Rex intercepted. He hit the creature with a soundless fury, claws driving through its chest, teeth tearing it apart before it ever touched Elias again. But something had changed in Rex's stance. His hackles bristled, eyes burning brighter, a sound vibrating low in his throat. Not rage without control. Rage sharpened to a blade. Elias pushed himself upright, blood streaking down his armor, and met Rex's gaze. For a heartbeat, man and apex predator stood at the edge of something ancient and brutal. A promise? A pact. The Krell began to fall back. Not because they were losing, because they were recognizing what hunted them. Predators understood predators. The station quieted, save for the fading echoes of battle. The bulkhead was cracked. Smoke hung heavy. Soldiers caught their breath. And Rex stood unmoving at the front, his silhouette carved against the wreckage like the embodiment of everything the council had mocked. Savor stared at him, chest heaving. "I thought I understood what it meant to be Apex," she said softly. "I was wrong." Elias wiped the blood from his jaw, grim but steady. "That's the thing about walking with monsters. You stop needing to prove who's in charge." Somewhere deeper in the station, a low, guttural sound echoed, a sound none of them mistook. The Krell Queen had arrived. Rex turned his head toward the noise, nostrils flaring. His tail flicked once, deliberate. Elias raised his rifle again, pain forgotten. "This isn't over." The Predator's golden eyes locked onto the dark beyond the bulkhead. No words were needed. The storm was only beginning. The corridors of Helios Station were silent now, eerily so. The alarms had died, the smoke had settled, and the air itself felt like it was holding its breath. Only the faint hum of power conduits broke the stillness, vibrating through the walls like a low growl before a storm. Orion Vance walked through the wreckage with measured steps, his pulse steady despite the ruin around him. In his right hand, his rifle dangled loosely, the safety still off. In his left, a control node blinked a steady blue, synced to something far more dangerous than any weapon he carried. Behind him padded Kale. Not walked. Not stomped. Padded. Every step was silent, fluid, like shadows wearing muscle and claws. The apex predator moved with lethal grace, its obsidian black fur streaked with streaks of bioluminescent gold that pulsed faintly with each heartbeat. Blood, alien blood, clung to its fangs, dripping softly onto the scorched floor. It didn't breathe heavily. It didn't need to. Kale was born to hunt. Up ahead, the doors to the grand assembly chamber flickered weakly. Cracks spiderwebbed through their metallic frame, evidence of the earlier siege. Orion stopped just short of them, resting one palm against the cool surface. His reflection stared back, tired eyes, soot-streaked skin, jaw clenched tight. This was it. The end of the farce. The council had mocked humanity for keeping pets. They'd called Kale a plaything. A domesticated curiosity. They were about to see just how wrong they'd been. Inside, the remnants of the Galactic Council huddled in fractured semicircles, their robes tattered, their composure shattered. Chancellor Jatek's mandibles clicked nervously as he surveyed the chamber, and Counselor Ethis kept glancing at the main doors, dreading what was coming. Orion could hear their whispers through the thin plating. Their fear was palpable. "Do we run?" Ethis hissed. "And go where?" Jatek rasped. "There's nowhere left to hide." Orion keyed the door release. With a harsh grind, the once proud assembly doors groaned open, revealing him, and the nightmare that followed at his heel. Every head snapped toward the entrance and every pair of alien eyes widened. Kale stepped through first. The predator's claws clicked once against the marble and silence drowned the room. Its eyes, gold-ringed and merciless, scanned the chamber. The council had watched battle footage. They'd seen Kale tear through war mechs and drones. But watching it move in the flesh was something else entirely. It radiated dominance, a primal kind of intelligence that had nothing to do with speech and everything to do with hierarchy. The weak understood the apex before it even acted. Orion followed, letting the image settle in their minds. He didn't need to posture. The apex predator did it for him. Jatek finally found his voice, though it trembled. What is the meaning of this intrusion, human? Orion gave a humorless smile. Intrusion? You sent fleets to burn Earth's outposts. You tried to cage us. You mocked our species for keeping something you couldn't comprehend. Consider this, the part where you learn. Kale moved closer. Counselors stumbled back, their ceremonial chairs scraping the floor. A Gorthian delegate reached for a hidden weapon, but before his fingers even brushed metal, Kale blurred. One heartbeat he was seated, the next, the apex was on him, pinning him to the ground with a growl that seemed to vibrate through bone. It didn't kill him. It didn't need to. The message was clear. You said they were pets, Orion continued, walking casually into the chamber. You called Kale primitive. Said humanity was too sentimental to survive. Funny thing about sentiment, it makes you dangerous when someone threatens what you love. You weaponized it, Ethish choked out. No, Orion said softly. We earned its loyalty. For a moment, no one dared to breathe. The council chamber, once a theater of politics and arrogance, now felt like a den. And Kale was the predator. They were prey. Jatek tried to regain his dignity, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. You can't hold the entire council hostage, human. You'll spark war. You already did, Orion replied. The difference is we ended it. He flicked the control node. Outside, the viewports came alive with light. The fleet that had once belonged to the council, massive dreadnoughts, cruisers, carriers, now bore the insignia of the coalition. Humanity's allies had risen when the council faltered. And Kale's kind, those they'd once dismissed as beasts, had torn through their warships like wet paper. The counselors finally understood the scope. This wasn't a hostage situation. This was a transfer of power. Kale released the Gorthian and returned to Orion's side, its head brushing lightly against his hand like a wolf greeting its packmate. The gesture was intimate. Terrifying. Proof that what bound them wasn't control. It was trust. Orion turned his gaze on the council one last time. You laughed when we called them family. You sneered when we shared our world with predators. But what you failed to understand is simple. Humanity doesn't tame monsters. We stand beside them. The chamber erupted, not in noise, but in the crushing silence of realization. The apex didn't need to roar to be heard. Outside, the coalition ships lit the void, casting their glow through the cracked assembly windows. A new order was dawning, not built on fear but on the unlikeliest of bonds. Jatek lowered his head first. Others followed, slowly, as though their bones had been carved from arrogance that now crumbled to dust. Orion exhaled quietly. Kale rumbled beside him. For the first time, the apex wasn't a spectacle. It was a throne. And humanity, the species they'd mocked for keeping pets, now ruled the room.